Jamal Adams, what is up? You are first. Give me a moment to tweet this out. Whoa, 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 whoa. Simply Deep, what is up? We're going to talk a little bit about Phantom Mephisto. What is up? We are going to talk a little bit about the upcoming PSVR game, the Titanic, and in the conspiracy theory that I believe that involves those ships. So just give me a minute to tweet this out. Oops. There we go. Okay, I tweeted out everything. Let me get on with the official introductions. Yo, 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 what is good, everybody? It is your boy Lincoln Clay coming back at you with another live stream. Let's all be one cohesive unit and hit the like button to help spread the content to a wider audience. And make sure you hit the bell icon so you can stay notified whenever I put out new content. I would appreciate that as well. And if you are a new subscriber, welcome to the channel. I hope you are enjoying the content. So there is a new experience game, what have you, is coming to PlayStation VR. It is the Titanic experience. Don't call me Danny. What is up? And this was first when this Titanic VR experience first came to VR. That was revealed to me by Polish Paul. Actually, you know, my three sources for VR information are Polish Paul, PSVR Without Parole, you know, featuring Brian Paul, and you know, last but not least, PSVR Frank. Jackknife, what is up? You know, like I think, you know, out of those three, PSVR Frank is most well known, and he reaches out to developers, they reach out to him, but I probably say ever since I subscribed to Polish Paul, he's been coming up with the VR news first. And he first reported this Titanic experience coming to VR about a week ago. But at the time that he reported it, it was only confirmed for, I think, Oculus and Vive. And there was no word at the time whether it was going to come to PlayStation VR. So today, PSVR Frank did a video revealing that the Titanic experience is coming to PlayStation VR, and he has played it already on, you know, on PC. And so I really didn't plan on doing a podcast today, but this particular one, you know, definitely captured my interest. And you know, this has everything to do with gaming, but at the same time, it has nothing to do with gaming. You know, VR can be used as an educational tool. I guess, you know, it's being used in classrooms. You know, for what's the word I'm looking for? You know, in any case, it's being used in classrooms as an educational tool. Arian Drake, what is up? Andrew Wilkins, what is up? Andrew Wilkins, you said, "Oh, I'm going to talk about the sister ship to the Titanic." Damn near everything makes big news is scripted or a lie, including the Kaepernick NFL situation. Ian Robertson, what is up? Andrew Wilkins, I have included a link in the description to a conspiracy documentary that, wow, I mean, there's a lot of questionable shit in there that proves that the ships were, you know, not proved, but it creates speculation that the ships were switched. I'll get to that in a minute. I want to talk about the Titanic experience on the VR. As I was saying, you know, the VR, you know, can be used as an educational tool. And in my case, I become fascinated with it when it allows you to partake in history, you know, and relive history. I bought the Apollo 11 experience for the PlayStation VR, and there's not much gameplay to it. It's more of an experience, but it's I think it's pretty cool. You know, you get to sit inside that actual rocket in VR. When that rocket takes off, you see You can look out that window and see daylight, and then like 15 minutes later, it's like black, and you look out that window and you see nothing but space. And I think it's a pretty neat experience. You actually, you're actually on the moon. That is a little bit interactive when you're on the moon, and you see some of the equipment that they supposedly had on the moon, which supposedly another conspiracy belief is that never happened. Nonetheless, I was still fascinated by it to see what it was like, um, to see what it might look like to actually be on the moon. As part of that experience, I think there was as part of that experience, you were on the planet, Uranus, the surface of Uranus, and it just looks like one of those planets you'd probably freeze to death within seconds. But in any case, so with this Titanic experience, there's several experiences you can do, and you can experience what it was like to be in lifeboat number 6 as it's being lowered into the water, and from the distance you can see the ship sink. And then there's several dives. You're part of an expedition team. There's several dives to the wreck. You can go down there, and explore the wreck. You can send a robot sub down inside the wreck of the ship and explore the ship. And I'm definitely fascinated with that. So to give you a little background about my fascination with the Titanic, I first heard about the Titanic sinking when I was about 10 years old. You're a kid, you hear about that stuff, you don't really pay much attention to it. And a few years later, I saw a movie called Raise the Titanic, where an American expedition team had found the Titanic, and they basically, in so many words, put balloons inside the ship, inflated it, and raised the ship. And the ship came up to the surface. For the most part, the ship itself was intact. And like the Russian Navy was going to try to take the ship from them, but then the American Navy came and intercepted them. And, and that was that. And so that's what started my fascination with the Titanic. I was like, man, wouldn't that be cool if they really could raise that ship? Jackknife, you said the Titanic was on fire before it set off. Yes, it was. One of the conspiracy theories is whether that fire was deliberately set or not. There was a fire down in the boiler room. And I guess, for the coal workers that worked in the ship, one of the biggest nightmares and one of their biggest fears is a fire burning on a ship. Andrew Wilkins, Americans never landed on the moon at all. Notice the shining novice Novi had the little boy wearing a sweater at the Apollo ship on it before the launch. Moon landing happened. Russia was in space first. Yeah, everybody knows Russia was in space first. And and I don't doubt that never happened. I've seen conspiracies before about how that moon landing never happened. That none of them ever happened. I guess supposedly we've been to the moon a couple of times, and there are theories that none of it ever happened, which I wouldn't be surprised by it at all. I'm just wondering why I'm just wondering that, the people that did it, why they went through so much damn trouble to lie to the American public. And so, Garuda Legends, let me guess, all of the rich people first on these emergency boats, and the peasants stay with the sinking ship. I don't give a fuck about the Titanic. Yeah, that's pretty much what happened, Garuda. Not only were the rich people first, they were bribing the White Star staff not to let the peasants on the boats with them. The third class and steerage passengers, the first class passengers were bribing the White Star staff not to let them on board the ship. And that's why a lot of ships launched, at half capacity. So I find it fascinating. And what's even more fascinating is the description that, the link that I put in the description. There is a belief that the ship at the bottom of the ocean is not the Titanic. It is her sister ship, the Olympic. And Well, Jackknife, there is a belief that that fire was set on purpose as a backup plan because the belief is that the ship was sunk on purpose to collect the insurance on it. So I guess the original plan was to scrape the ship up against the side of an iceberg. And if that didn't sink the ship, then the fire was possibly plan B. And I mean, after watching that documentary, there's so much crazy shit surrounding that it was like, wow, you know. Um, so let's start with, you know, I'll try not to be on too long, you know, and this is the part that doesn't have anything about gaming, but like I said, again, I'm really fascinated about the Titanic, and I've spent hours upon hours doing research on, you know, on the Titanic, never knowing that there was a conspiracy theory out there that the ships were switched. You know, and I think when I was a kid, and I first started hearing about the Titanic and being fascinated with it, I didn't know that there was 3 ships, and the Titanic was the second one. So anyway, let me find something real quick and take you back to the beginning of how this all started. I mean, but if anybody, you know, if anybody's you know, fascinated with this and definitely wants to chime in and give me your thoughts on the Titanic conspiracy theory, damn, I definitely love to hear what you think. Oh, just a minute. I'm trying to find a pic here. Here we go. So let me find this picture. Okay. Okay, Andrew Wilkins, damn. First they set a fire on purpose on the Titanic, and then they set that fire at church in Waco using a bulldozer with a flamer on it. Hey, you know, one of the things I definitely think there was some kind of funny shit going on with that Waco stuff there, Andrew Wilkins. And I think, you know, one of the things to me that makes it look so funny is that they waited so damn long to move in on those people. So you say adding coal to a furnace to power a wooden boat sounds like an amazing idea, not like there's any potential to start a fire on accident. Um, See, the thing about that fire, Garuda Legends, that was, you know, supposedly on the Titanic / Olympic, whatever you want to call it. From what I understand, there was a fire, basically at the bottom of a coal pile, and rather than try to put the fire out, they threw more coal on top of it. And so basically, I guess like when burning coal at the bottom of a ship hits, reacts, that still reacts with cold water, I guess it supposedly creates an explosion. So, so that was basically the plan B, to deliberately sink the ship. So, so let me go back. Let me share my screen with everybody real quick, because this is where it all starts. Whoever that person is. Screen share. Okay, this picture right here is the RMS Olympic. This was the first of the 3 ships that were built. If you look towards the back of the ship, there is a gaping hole that was torn into the side of it. A British, battleship called the HMS Hawk hit the side of it. I guess the propellers from the Olympic were so strong that it sucked the battleship into the side of the ship. Now, the battleship was fitted with an underwater ram, You know, there was made specifically to tear holes in ships when they ram another ship. So let me show you a picture of the HMS Hawk, what it looked like after it plowed into the side of the Olympic. So you see the front end is all crumpled up of the ship, but it's, you know, it still remains afloat. And I'd imagine a lot of that probably has to do with that underwater ram. Let me see. Here's another picture that I never seen before. Nope. So let me go back. And but there's another, you know, close up of the hole that it ripped to the side of the Olympic. And so that's where it all started. You said the Titanic had a huge gouge down the side of the ship before they set off. I wouldn't doubt that. I wouldn't doubt that for a minute. So let me, you know, they set sail knowing they didn't have enough safety boats because regulations at the time didn't require them to carry enough boats for every passenger on the ship. Let me make sure I'm okay. So anyway, what happened with the RMS Olympic, when that battleship plowed into the side of it, it fucked up a lot of shit. It fucked up a lot of shit. You know, the propeller came off. I guess it fucked up the crankshaft. I guess it, like, you know, shocked the engine and shit. But the most damage that it caused was that it bent the keel and twisted the fuck out of the ship. Essentially, the ship's back was broken. And I guess the Admiralty investigated the incident, and they decided that that British battleship did nothing wrong. Therefore, the White Star in the RMS Olympic was at fault. And because of that, the Olympics insurance would not cover the damages. And so I guess since the insurance wouldn't cover it, I guess the estimated cost of the damage they felt wasn't worth it. So I guess what was going to needed to be done was that the keel was going to have to be cut out of the ship. The ship was going to have to be cut in half. They would have to take the keel out of it, put another keel in it, and put the ship back together again. And I guess for what it was going to cost, it was going to, you know, it wasn't worth it. And not only that, it would have put the ship out of service for months, and they wouldn't have been making any money off of it. And they couldn't sell the ship. I mean, they couldn't, you know, sell the ship as scrap because they wouldn't have got any of them. They wouldn't have gotten near their money back because that was like back in 1908 or something like that. It cost them $7.5 million to build that ship. Yeah, that's quite a bit of money back in, you know, 1908. And another problem was that because of the bent keel, the ship would have never passed an inspection, and so the ship would have been put out of service by the inspectors anyway, because it wouldn't have been able to pass an inspection. So right there, that's where that's where it was believed that the decision was made to go ahead and switch the ships. The Titanic wasn't ready yet, so I guess they took parts off of the Titanic to repair the Olympic, to put it back in service. And I guess it had another accident where it ran over a sunken ship, and again the propeller came off. And again, they took a propeller that was supposed to be used for the Titanic and put it on the Olympic. So anyway, I'm going to say, long story short, a lot of the ships back then were built identical on purpose for this kind of shit. And I guess back then, insurance fraud was pretty common amongst ship owners. Yeah, the captain was an idiot. From what I understand in this documentary, he had a track record. I guess he tore up a few of their ships. Entertainment Wizard, what is up? I guess he had a reputation for driving his ships. It says it was worded exactly like that the captain had a reputation for driving his ships like speedboats. So when that accident with the British battleship happened, they were pointing the finger at each other. You know, they were saying that, you know, the British battleship plowed into the side of the ship. You know, the British Navy was saying that, you know, they were hot dogging and showing off and shit like that. And that's how they got sucked into the side of the ship. So again, you know, the Olympics insurance would not pay for the repairs. And they wouldn't have gotten near their money back if they would have scrapped the ship out. And because it wouldn't have passed an inspection again, the ship would have been put out of service anyway. So that's when the decision was made to switch the ships. So I guess they're speculating. So let me pull up another picture again. Hmm. There we go. I can use that one. So I'm going to share my screen one more time. Whoops. Here we go. Right here. This picture right here was the last time that the Olympic and the Titanic were seen side by side. And you can look at that picture and pretty much tell that those ships are identical. There are a few, there are some slight differences in the ships. And here, let me see. Here's another picture right here. It's hard to tell because this picture is so small, but right there, that is the Olympic right there. And the red circles are the areas where the ship was repaired, after that collision with the battleship. But in any case, this was the last picture right here where the two ships were seen together. And I guess it is believed by conspiracy theorists that when these two ships were together, the weekend that this, that they were together in this picture was probably the moment that the ships were switched. They believe that a crew probably came in, during the weekend when the workers were gone and switched switched the name tags on the ship. And then I guess anything inside the ship did not needed to be switched because it was all White Star standard issue. Like the dishes inside the ship they were not specifically named to the ship. It just said White Star Line. So they didn't have to change any of that. So they basically had to change, the name tags on the outside of the ship, on the back of the ship. Anything that said Titanic or Olympic on it was switched. Entertainment Wizard, you said the proof is in the shape of the Titanic's bridge, and the Titanic and Olympic bridges have slightly different shapes, and the Titanic bridge matches the ship at the bottom of the Atlantic. Yeah, I've seen I seen a video on that where they talked about that, about like where the wheelhouse was or something like that, or where the bridge was at, because I guess like the Olympic had like a curve shape on it, and the Titanic had like a square shape across the bridge. And so at the bottom of the ocean, the bridge is gone, but I guess that line, on the floor goes straight across. I guess, supposedly proving that that's actually the Titanic, that was the bridge of the Titanic. But I've also seen pictures about the I guess the windows on the ship. I guess on the Titanic, the windows on the ship had an even square. They were all even squares. But I guess on the Olympic, those windows weren't, they were uneven. There was some windows that were skinny, and there were some windows that were wider. And I've seen some pictures of the ship at the bottom of the ocean, and that's the one thing that I paid attention to. And I've seen, pictures where the windows looked uneven, suggesting that could be the Olympic. And then that documentary, watch that documentary, Entertainment Wizard, that I put the link in there. I guess, a recent expedition, at least at the time that documentary was made, I guess at the time, a recent expedition to the Titanic, I guess the name on the side of the ship where the Titanic was, two of the letters had fallen off. And underneath, I guess the T and the I had fallen off or some shit like that. And underneath that were letters engraved into the side of the ship. The letters MP were engraved into the side of the ship. And so I guess that's something else that people pointed out, that back then those ships had their names engraved in them. But when the Titanic made her maiden voyage, the name Titanic was riveted onto the side of the ship. suggesting that it was covered up. The name Olympic was covered up with the riveted letters of the Titanic. Garuda Legends, I could not even imagine what it would be like dealing with the cold. And someone said to me that the ship is sinking, especially if I had a helper on the boat. That is a horrible death. And that is the main reason, Garuda Legends, that I want to get this Titanic experience when it comes to the PlayStation VR. I want to sit in that lifeboat and see what it looked like when that ship was sinking. Because that's got to be a crazy experience. Because one of the things, like when I play Star Trek Bridge Crew and on VR, when the game first loads up, you're on this shuttle and it's taking you to docks where the 3 ships are docked. There are 3 ships docked. There's the original Enterprise from the 60s series. There is the new ship called the Aegis, and then there is the Enterprise from the Next Generation. You're on this shuttle and you're circling around these ships, and they are huge. I mean, that is something you have to see. That is crazy, circling around those starships, seeing them in the actual size that they're meant to be. And I mean, those ships are huge. So, again, so being able to experience that Titanic sinking, it's not going to shed any light on the conspiracy theory, but I still want to know what it must have felt like being on that boat. Especially how they dealt with getting the passengers off the boat. And 1,500 people died, and out of the, like 700 and something people had survived that sinking, and out of the 700 and something people that had survived that sinking, 400 of them were people who worked for the ship. They were White Star staff. So most of them was interested in saving themselves than saving passengers. No. Jack Knight, sharks in the water. That is what made me start doing that research on the Titanic, because my belief was that when the ship went down, anybody who jumped off the ship into the water, after the ship went down, I was led to believe that they were probably eaten by sharks. That couldn't have, it probably wouldn't have happened because of those frigid waters. And I guess sharks just don't deal well with, cold waters. So the only shark that can survive in those frigid waters is, I think it's called the sand shark. And that shark is about as big as a whale. That shark can grow to be like 40 feet long, but it doesn't eat meat and is very docile. It's not an aggressive shark. So even if that shark, and then it spends most of its time, towards the bottom of the ocean. So even if that shark would have been around, it wouldn't have ate the people anyway. And, then after, doing research and learning about hypothermia and that kind of shit, the people that landed in the water probably only lived for a couple of minutes before they froze to death. So you said, or some rich guy who was full on drunk and passed out in the cabin, drowned in his sleep. That very well could have happened, because see, when the ship struck the iceberg, the only people that really felt it and knew something wasn't right was the people that was in the bottom of the ship. The third class passengers and the steerage passengers. Yeah, that's probably what I might have been talking about, the whale shark or something like that, Entertainment Wizard. The blue shark, I have to go back and do my research on that, because I used to do a lot of research on sharks and shit too. So about when the ship actually struck the iceberg, people at the top of the ship, first class, they really didn't feel anything. It was just a slight vibration. The people at the bottom of the ship is what, they're the ones that felt everything. And so, the first class passengers, when everybody was evacuated to the decks, they didn't think the ship was going to sink, and they sure as hell, being as rich as they were, didn't want to get into them peasant ass lifeboats. So now what was really crazy is, sucks, it was a calm night. They could have overloaded the lifeboats and saved close to 1,600 people. They only had enough. Even if they would have filled those lifeboats up, it was only enough for half the people, because there was 2,200 people on that ship. So they only would have been able to save half of them, if they would have overloaded those boats. Now, from what I understand, Murdoch, who was the first officer on the ship, he didn't give a fuck. He was, loading the ship. He was loading the boats up. Whoever was there was getting on there. He was letting them get on the boat. But Charles Lightoller, who was the third officer, he was being strict about that shit about women and children getting on the boat first. There's also a conspiracy that the ship was sunk on purpose to stop, in order to create the Federal Reserve Bank. So I guess like the owner of the Titanic was was an American businessman, J.P. Morgan, and he was trying to create a monopoly across the Atlantic route. And so he bought, he owned the White Star Line and those ships. No, Lightoller, I believe Lightoller was I might have to go back and do my research, but I thought he was the third officer. It could have been Lowe. He could have been the third officer. He might have been the third officer. But I'll have to go back and make sure. But J.P. Morgan was the owner of those ships, and he was trying to create a monopoly. And so I guess as part of the agreement, the want to kill the rich people who oppose the Federal Reserve idea. That's what I heard. See, that's what it was. J.P. Morgan and his associates, because thanks a lot, Mahad, because I lost my train of thought. J.P. Morgan and his rich associates wanted to create the Federal Reserve Bank, but there was some rich people who were against the idea, with John Jacob Astor being one of them. So it is theorized that another conspiracy theory was that when the ship was supposed to set sail, J.P. Morgan was supposed to be on that ship to help, promote the ship's maiden voyage. But at the last minute, he suddenly became sick and did not get on the ship, claiming he was sick. Not only did he not get on the ship, I guess he had some very exquisite statues that were on the ship that he had taken off the ship when he made the decision not to get on the ship. But he was found only a couple of days later on a golf course with his mistress. So he knew that ship was going to sink. So not only did he not get on the ship, but I guess his rich associates, friends that were supposed to get on that ship, they all canceled their voyage. They all canceled their trips at the last second as well. So it is, as far as the Federal Reserve thing, it is believed that, John Jacob Astor was one of the targets that they were looking to have, knocked off so they could go through with the Federal Reserve Bank. So that's another story. I was watching a documentary on that. I didn't get too deep into it because I was like, man, this shit is just crazy. Entertainment Wizard. Rank was captain, then executive officer. I'm assuming you mean executive officer. I'm assuming you mean chief officer. Then first and second officers. When Captain E.J. Smith, he was the captain on the Olympic before he was the captain on the Titanic. He was the captain, and Murdoch was the first officer over on the Olympic. Now, from what I understand, now after watching this documentary, they think that E.J. Smith was in on the deliberate sinking of the ship. Andrew Wilkins, sounds like how all of the known and important politicians were not in the air the morning of 9/11. Not only that, from what I understand, the day that those towers were dropped, a lot of people were told not to come to work that day. So that's another conspiracy, theory I definitely like to touch on. Is, I mean, I think our government is so fucking corrupt. They will lie, they will murder people in a minute and cover it up and make it look like some kind of accident. So getting back to the situation with the Titanic thing. So that was another theory. Some other theories that went around that that I guess like coal workers, they were kind of like contract workers. They would sign on to work with the ship. So from what I understand, Christopher Hart, PSVR has been getting great games lately. Exactly. With Firewall being 1 week from tomorrow, 8 days, the countdown is on. But more conspiracy theories about the ship. It is also, I guess, it is also proven that right before, like now, after the switch had taken place, White Star upped the insurance on the Titanic, which was believed, which was actually the Olympic. They upped their insurance on that ship, and when the ship sank, they collected $12 million, from their insurance. So, from what I understand, back then, insurance fraud was pretty common. Ship owners deliberately overloaded their ships. I guess they were called coffin ships, which they said in that documentary. They deliberately overloaded their ships with the intentions of these ships sinking and collecting the insurance money. Said, yep, a building should not fall from the base down if damage happens on the higher floor levels. I agree. You know what? I can't remember, but it seems like I had heard some conspiracy theories that, that there was dynamite charges at the bottom of those buildings. So there's but back to the Titanic thing, there's so much shit surrounding that. Now, it is believed in this documentary, it is believed that E.J. Smith, was the captain of the Titanic, was in on this deliberate sinking. Basically, this documentary suggests that White Star basically came to him and said, you tore up a few of our ships, you owe us. Basically, you're going to be in on the sinking of this ship. There was supposed to be another ship, the Californian, that was supposed to be in place, that was supposed to come in and swoop up the passengers as the ship is sinking. So, but what ended up going wrong was the Californian, they received a message from the Californian letting them know that the Californian was stopped for the night, basically letting them know that they were in position to pick them up whenever they're ready to, sink the ship. But I think what ended up happening was, according to the belief, is that the Californian was too far away to see the flares coming from the Titanic. And I guess they were looking for a specific color. Now, this was in the inquiries. When after the ship sank, there were two inquiries. There was an American inquiry and there was a British inquiry. And what's crazy is I live in Michigan, and Michigan has a connection to the Titanic. From what I understand, when the Carpathia picked up the passengers, J. Bruce Ishmay, who was chairman of the White Star Lines, was on the Carpathia. And he had arranged for another ship to take him out of there, to get him out of New York. But the governor of Michigan subpoenaed him to make him stay here in America and testify at the American inquiry. So he testified and then got out of there. And then here's what's crazy. The survivors of the Titanic, the passengers, I guess they were asked, Sick Humor, what is up? I guess the survivors, the passengers, the civilians were asked not to try to sue White Star Lines over the sinking. Now, the White Star staff who survived the sinking, once they got back to Europe, they were taken and they were held in a warehouse for 24 hours, and they were made to sign a non-disclosure agreement, never to talk about what happened with the sinking, because if they did, they would be sentenced to prison for 20 years. They believe that the British government helped with the cover-up. They had to, because if they now here was the British government. Here's was their interest, their vested interest in this. Um, and it says so in that documentary. As part of the agreement for an American, J.P. Morgan, to own the White Star Lines, he agreed that the British government could requisition his ships as Royal Naval Reserves if it is needed. So the First World War was about to start. So they were getting ready to, use his ships, put his ships in service in the war. So Jamal King, what is up? So the thing about the sinking of the ships, he was the owner. And so I guess the White Star was in trouble. I guess they were on the verge of bankruptcy, and they might be, forced to close their doors. If they did that, the Harland and Wolff shipyard that built the ships were highly dependent on the White Star as their biggest customer. So if the White Star would have went under, Harland and Wolff would have went under. And J. Pierre, I forgot his last name. He was the owner of Harland and Wolff, and he was good friends with J. Bruce Ismay. So if the White Star would have went into bankruptcy and would have went into liquidation, that documentary says the major creditor was J.P. Morgan himself. So he was both owner and banker of the ships. So if the White Star would have went into liquidation, he would have no doubt seized the rest of his ships, and the British government would have lost all those ships and not have been able to use them in the war. So they helped. It is theorized that they helped with the cover up, so J.P. Morgan wouldn't take all the ships back. Now, I mean, that shit just got wild, and that it just gets wild and wilder and wilder. I mean, I could sit here talking about this shit forever. I would pretty much say that if you are curious about this conspiracy, watch that documentary that I put in the description, the link to it. I'm trying to think of some other shit that's like, whoa. The situation with Murdoch. It is believed that when the White Star approached Captain E.J. Smith and basically told him, "You owe us," it is believed that he surrounded himself with people that he trusted. And so when E.J. Smith was transferred to the Titanic, which was actually the Olympic, Murdoch was promoted to chief officer on the Olympic, but E.J. Smith pulled some strings and had him brought onto the Titanic as first officer. So that, E.J. Smith kind of fucked him over. So, so what happened to the ship? What happened to the real Titanic? It went on to put in 20 years of service as the Olympic. There's some other funny looking shit too, because I guess the Olympic towards the front of the ship had 16 portholes, and Titanic had 14. There's documented pictures that when the ship was being constructed, it had 14 portholes. Well, on her maiden voyage, all of a sudden the ship now has 16 portholes. And not only that, on her maiden voyage, she all of a sudden had some uneven windows. Other things that, made them be able to pull this off was with the Titanic supposedly being a new ship. When the inspectors came through to put the ship through its trial runs, these inspectors had already been through it with the Olympic. So when they got onto the Titanic, they thinking that this is a brand new ship, identical to the first ship. There's really not much need to put the ship through a bunch of shit because we know the ship's going to run. So I guess the ship did it. They had the ship go back, forth, make a couple of turns, and they stamped it, and that was the end of it. And they all went out and had lunch. All the while, that fire was burning at the bottom of that ship, because I guess that fire had been burning for days. So I do believe that ship at the bottom of the ocean is the Olympic. I do believe it was sunk for insurance money. And one thing about corporations, their greed is unbelievable. And one thing they not about to come out of pocket for a whole bunch of money. They're gonna find a way to not only keep from losing that money, they're gonna find a way to turn a profit from that shit. So that's the part of it that has nothing to do with gaming. But I still want to know what it was like. I said, what it was like to sit on that lifeboat and watch that ship sink, to see that shit in VR. Lincoln, you watched the documentary called Inside Job made by Sony in 2009? No, I have not. A Garuda Legend says you don't want to imagine the lungs of the people feeding the engine. Yeah, I'd imagine it had to be hot and smoky down there. Yeah. And I guess those guys in the boiler rooms pretty much weren't allowed to come upstairs, which I could get that, with all them dirty, with them having them dirty clothes on, hot and sweaty and shit like that. The last thing you want to do is see, cool, what's up? I guess the last thing they want is for, first class passengers to see somebody like that walking through the ship. So they were pretty much confined to the bottom of the ship. They did their work. And when they retired for the night, they, went to bed and got back up and did the same thing. It's about economic crisis of 2008. It's very damn good. Exposes all the conspiracy towards the crisis. It's something I'll definitely have to check out because, I definitely believe in conspiracies. And see, the thing about conspiracies is when people give you the conspiracy theories, sometimes they think you sound crazy as fuck. This conspiracy theory about the Titanic that I'm sharing with all of you, I actually talked to Thrash about it about 6 months ago, when he started up his Hidden Conspiracies channel. I told him I was a big fan of conspiracies, and I told him about my conspiracy belief about those ships being switched. Um, and then I've even seen transcripts. I've seen transcripts of both the American inquiry and the British inquiry, and the captain of the California. I guess he was looking for a specific color of flares coming from the Titanic, and I guess they were looking for red flares or blue flares, and all they saw was white flares, and those white flares came from a fishing boat that was in the area that was like illegally fishing or illegally seal hunting or something like that. And the white flares was to recall their boats that was out there, fishing or hunting or whatever they was doing. Those white flares were to call those boats back to the ship. And that were the flares that the Californians saw. And because they weren't flares that were coming from the Titanic, they never made a move. They never came to get them. And it is believed that the Titanic was far enough away that they just could not see the flares that the Titanic shot off. Because I guess they shot off like 25 flares or some shit like that. There's a lot of crazy ass shit that I had read about that. Once the Federal Reserve is up, the Great Depression happens. Yeah, pretty much. And that's some crazy shit. What else was some crazy shit that happened with that, with the conspiracy? So in the British inquiry, basically the captain of the California that was supposed to be in place to pick up the passengers, he got the blame for the Titanic sinking. Because according to the prosecutor, Lord Mercy, he determined that it was the captain of the California's fault, that like basically you were in position to go pick him up and you didn't pick him up. Therefore, it is on you to satisfy this court and justify your actions and that kind of stuff. They said it in the documentary, so that was really fucked up. So I guess this dude spent years trying to clear his name, trying to keep going back to court and shit like that, trying to clear his name. Now here's the crazy thing. Here's another thing about the conspiracy theory. The Californian, as I was saying, that ship was supposed to be in position to pick up the survivors. When the California took off, it had no passengers on it, only the crew. And I guess it had like 2,200 blankets and sweaters on there. So where are you going with 2,200 sweaters and blankets? The root of legends, you said it's not hard to believe. Even the carnival ship failed and people were stuck walking in shit water for like 2 days. I think it happened in like 2014. Yeah, I remember hearing something like that. I think I even seen, I think people even put up like smartphone videos of the lights flickering on and off and shit like that. And the ship like shaking and um, so no, that's my greatest nightmare being on a cruise ship. That if it goes down like like those Caribbean ships that goes through those tropical waters and shit like that. If those ships go down, if you're not on the lifeboat, you probably will be shark food. And so that movie Titanic. Oh shit. You know what? Hang on, everybody. I gotta shoot to the dryer real quick and throw my clothes in there. So give me a couple of minutes. I'll be right back. Okay, everybody, I'm back. Thank you for your patience. Now, Entertainment Wizard, I saw your comment right before I went to the laundry room. You said, "Would not have made a difference. The California was surrounded by ice and her boilers were shut down. It would have taken an hour to fire up the boiler and start the engines. They never would have reached the Titanic in time." You're definitely right about the ice, about the ice part of it. But in that documentary, they said that once the California was in position, they stopped for the night, but the captain ordered the boilers to remain on for the crew to keep the boilers going. Said, I think this year 9 people died in a duck boat because the idiot captain thought it was a good idea to drive into ragging waters. Um, oh, you guys are still talking about that. You guys are talking about the carnival thing. Um, oh, I know what you're talking about. Where I guess the captain of that ship, I guess, wanted to get closer. I guess so like tourists could see the shore or whatever, and they came too close and basically drove over rocks. So, um, Entertainment Wizard also, the uh what was crazy, some other crazy things about it was the Marconi operators that sent the wireless messages. Basically that was like the Western Union of its time, because the Marconi operators worked for a private company. The Marconi was a private company that was on the ship, and so the main function of the Marconi's operators where people would come in there and pay to have letters wirelessly sent back to wherever whoever was receiving it on the other end. And so while they were trying to send messages back for passengers, they were receiving ice warnings from other ships. And I guess they received so many ice warnings that one of the Marconi operators got mad and sent a message back to one of the ships telling them to shut up. And so, also in that documentary, uh, the path that the Titanic took to get to New York, uh, I guess they knew that ice field was there. So I guess instead of trying to go around it, they went right into it. So, people were questioning, why would you do something like that? And they were going pretty fast too. I don't know, about the speed and how that played into it, but I mean, shit. Also, now this doesn't have anything to do with the conspiracy theory, but I guess like the lookouts who saw the iceberg did not have binoculars. I guess the binoculars were left on the Olympic. Now, how the fuck does $1 million company like that, only have one set of binoculars between two ships? So there's a lot of crazy shit. Um, then I followed the lives of some of the survivors of what kind of life they left. Um, after the Titanic sinking, some of them couldn't get jobs because they were considered to be bad luck because they were on the Titanic. One woman who was a nurse, she was on the Titanic when it sunk, and the crazy part about it was the third ship called the Britannic. That ship sunk. That ship was the biggest out of all three ships, and that ship never saw commercial service because by then the First World War had started. So the British Navy had requisitioned that ship and commissioned it as a hospital ship. Um, okay, that's what it was. Entertainment Wizard. You're right. They were locked in a cabinet, and the officer had the key that left the ship. Okay, you're right about that. Um, but yeah, a woman that was on the Titanic was also on the Britannic when it sunk. Now the third ship, The Britannic, it was originally supposed to be named the Gigantic, but because the Titanic sunk, and I guess they were like kind of shooting their mouth off that this ship was unsinkable, when it sunk, they decided to change the name because they didn't want to deal with backlash. So they changed the name of the third ship from Gigantic to Britannic. And that ship is in the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea. And then for the most part, that ship is still intact, but it's like covered with all kinds of like moss and shit like that. Um, it is I think the ship is only in a couple 100 feet of water. Violet Chessup, she was on the Olympic when they hit the when the HMC Hawk on Titanic going to sinking, and Britannic and on Britannic going to sinking, and after the war she went back to the Olympic. Okay, and on Britannic going to sinking, and after the war she went back to the Olympic. Um, I do remember hearing her name come up. You know, I've even I have a book that was given to me, you know, by my son's mother about 15 years ago. It's still up in my closet right now, and it has a lot of, I guess, like a lot of rare photographs of the Titanic. And then I guess there is a copy of the manifest of like all the shit that was on the ship. You know, like 20,000 bottles of beer and like 80,000 eggs and all that kind of stuff. I also did some digging. See that movie, you when that movie The Titanic first came out with DiCaprio and whatever that chick's name is, they never mentioned that that was a fictional couple. Uh, okay, wow, that's amazing that she was on all three ships. Yeah, I knew the Britannic was in shallow water because when the ship sunk, it basically, you know, sunk in the water sideways. So yeah, the entertainment wizard, you've done a lot of research because everything you said in here, either either I know it to be true, or was something um that I can't dispute. Yeah, depending on how you, yeah. She definitely had the best or worst look depending on how you look at it. You know, shortly after the Titanic sunk, JP Morgan died. I think he died like 2 years later. And and I think the White Star never really recovered from the financial trouble that they were in. So what was really fucked up was that White Star was competing with the Cunard line, and the Cunard line had the ships like the Lusitania and the Mauretania, which were luxurious, you know, ships at the time as well. So shortly after J.P. Morgan died, um, I guess when the Cunard line was in financial trouble, they got funding from the government. But instead, the White Star line, instead of getting funding from the government, I believe they were forced to merge with the Cunard line, which the Cunard line still exists today. So March 31st, 1913, is that when J.P. Morgan died? So Entertainment Wizard, do you have a PSVR? Because if you don't, here's what I'll do. When that Titanic experience comes to PlayStation VR, I'm definitely going to get it, and I'll stream it. Oh, cool. Um, and I say this over and over again, Entertainment Wizard, to anybody who's thinking about getting a PlayStation VR, I think they should definitely catch one when it's on sale for $200. And I think it's a high reward, low risk venture. So I'm definitely going to stream that. I also was thinking about streaming that Star Trek Bridge Crew for the PSVR, just so people can see how big that ship is. Just you're circling around those ships in the shuttle. But one of the reasons I have not streamed that ship yet is because communication is key on that game. You must be in communication with that crew, because the captain in that game, the captain receives his orders from Starfleet. From there, he has all the information of where we're going, how far it is. He gives the orders of how we want to get there, whether we're going to go into warp drive or whether we're going to get there on impulse power, all that kind of stuff. So every time I played the game, I've always been the engineer. So my job as an engineer is to distribute power to the engines, to the shields, to the phaser banks. Um, and you know, there's not enough power to power all that stuff. So I have to distribute the power, to where it's needed. So when the ship gets under attack and the shields start dropping, then I have to make repairs to the shield, and I have to divert power to the shields so the ship can withstand bombardment. But if we need to get our asses out of there, then I gotta, divert power to the engine so we can get the fuck up out of there. And then you have to pay attention to the damage that the engine is taking, because if the engine takes too much damage, the warp drive will get fucked up. And if the warp drive gets fucked up, you're not getting out of there. And basically, that's your ass if you can't, if the warp engines go out. Waiting for the sale, most of my money went to saving up for dental surgery. Try to get one Black Friday. Hey, good luck with that. I really hope you get one. It's a shame that you don't have one already with Firewall being coming out next Tuesday. But short story long, the biggest reason why I have not streamed Star Trek Bridge Crew is because it's going to be kind of tough. I don't want to confuse anybody playing a game, talking to the crew, receiving my orders and responding to the captain and letting him know that I got the orders and all that kind of stuff, and still trying to respond to comments, because I tried that with the Rainbow Six and that was kind of awkward. I'm sitting here playing Rainbow Six and I'm responding to comments, and my teammates were like, "Who are you talking about? What are you talking about?" Then I had to explain to them that this game is being streamed for YouTube. But Entertainment Wizard, I really think Star Trek Bridge Crew is one of my favorite games on VR. I haven't played it in a while, but it's one of my favorite games. But sure, I think I'll do that this week. I think I'll stream it once this week. I'll be ready to shut this stream down in about 20 minutes anyway. And I am not ready to call it a night yet. So I'm going to stream something once I'm done with this podcast. I could conceivably stream Madden, because I think I have to take it back tomorrow night. I think tomorrow's my last night, on my 3-day rental. And I don't know. The other option is I want to stream something through the VR. Something different. I don't want to stream, GT Sport for the 98th time. So, and then the game that I played against Craig Harris Saturday night, the game started out just fine, but then there was moments where I was hitting buttons to throw balls and it didn't immediately respond. There was definitely some hesitation from the time that it took from me pressing the button to you try Res Infinite in VR? No, I did not. Garuda Legends, you missed it. You said you want to see the tiebreaker with Puerto Rock. I played that game yesterday and beat him. It was rather climatic. It had a rather dramatic ending. I can put the link to it in there if you want to see it. I can put the link in the chat in the comments. See here. My channel. Videos. Copy. And paste. There you go, Garuda Legends. That is the link to the tiebreaker that I played with Puerto Rock. It was a hell of a game. I ended up, last week we only played the tiebreaker yesterday. The week before we played 2 games. I won the first one and Puerto Rock won the second one. And then we played the tiebreaker yesterday. Side-Eye Spirit. Doesn't one of the free games on PlayStation Plus this month have VR capabilities? I don't know because I don't know what games are free this month. So please fill me in on which game is free. So I don't really follow PlayStation Plus. I think they give away some decent games on the PlayStation Plus, but a lot of those games I either already have them or I'm not interested in them. Hey, thanks, Garuda Legends. That was a crazy game. I mean, truth be told, at the bottom of the 9th inning, when Puerto Rock was already up, 1-0, I'm sitting here telling myself, don't panic, don't panic, don't panic. You can get that 1 run back, which was the truth. But the way Puerto Rock was pitching that game, I didn't think I could do it because he was pitching a pretty good game. I mean, nobody's perfect. I made some mistakes and left some pitches dead over the plate, and he got a hold of one of them. He did the same thing. He left a few pitches over the plate, and even though I didn't hit any home runs, I was able to string together some hits. And then, the hit that caused me that helped me win the game should have been a routine. It should have been a routine pop up, a routine fly ball, and he should have caught it. But what he was saying, it was on his end, was that how the game automatically selects the person that's supposed to be closest to the ball. It didn't do that, except it selected the person that was furthest away from the ball, and therefore it dropped in before he could get to it. And that allowed me to score 2 runs and win the game. So I'll have to go back, and watch it. Yeah, I had 2 people on base. Because one of them I did like a sacrifice bunt to move the runners over to second and third. Yeah, that was an absolutely crazy game, but definitely a lot of fun. He said we can definitely do it again. We're definitely gonna do it again. And I also talked to him about me getting I got a hold of the Fight Night Champion. I got a hold of that, and I'm gonna try to contact Zaire and see if he want his ass whooped. And I did buy the game, but something funny is happening. Typical Microsoft shit. I bought the game. I tried to go on Xbox Live to play the game, and it's telling me that my console could not connect to Xbox Live. And it can't be my Xbox Live membership because it doesn't expire until July of 2019. So like typical Microsoft bullshit, it's like the shit fucking up. And I really don't feel like calling these motherfuckers because I'm going to be on hold for 45 minutes. Then I'm going to end up speaking to somebody who kind of don't know what the fuck's going on and going to keep transferring me around. So that felt like that was a wasted fucking $20 buying that game, but I'm going to try to find a way to get that shit online. And then once I get it online, then I'm going to try to hit Zaire up on Twitter and see if he wants his ass whooping, see if he wants this smoke. So it's about 20 minutes to 11, like I said. So I'm getting ready to shut the stream down in a minute and go jump on the PlayStation and stream something else. I definitely want to thank everybody who could stomach me talking about this Titanic conspiracy, but I've absolutely fascinated with that ship. You know, especially once I learned that there was a conspiracy about the ships being switched. Um, that shit was on my mind forever and a day. So, but thanks everybody for like I said, having a stomach to listen to me talking about that shit. Because um, all the research that I had done on those ships, I definitely wanted to Garuda Legends. I think I heard they were making a new Titanic boat as well. I want to say that I saw pictures or video of the progress. Let me look it up, see if I can find it. Just a minute. Because I think I heard a Chinese company was supposed to be doing this. Doing the funding for this ship. Um, you said you heard the construction is on hold. The rich guys having money problems. I wouldn't doubt it. Some of the some other things that I had learned about the Titanic switch theory was I guess the lifeboats had been sold, and I guess one of the lifeboats, I guess the gunwale on one of those lifeboats actually had the name tag Olympic on it and not Titanic. So a lot of crazy shit. Entertainment Wizard, did you see now? Like, supposedly the Olympics supposedly went on to put in like 20 years of service, which I believe was actually the Titanic, working under the name of the Olympic, because they had been switched. When the ship had finally been sold for scrap, did you see the video of the ship being towed to its final destination? And then did you see the video of ship breakers breaking the ship apart? Garuda Legends, everything that I'm speaking of is in that documentary, in the link, in the description. That link in the description, everything that I talked about is in that documentary. Go back and watch that documentary. So the documentary is about 50 minutes long, but I think it's a great documentary. Because some of the shit that they put in front of you to create the conspiracy theory, some of it's like, yeah, well, I don't know, but there's some of us like, whoa, it's hard to argue some of that. Yeah, there was you see the ship making its last voyage. The ship's making its last voyage to its final destination. Uh, and I guess there was a couple of it looks like there was a couple of escort ships with it. Uh, once it got to its final, I guess once it got to where it was going, the first phase of the ship being scrapped was started. And then I think from there the ship was went to another destination. And there's video of ship breakers using blow torches and shit like that to start cutting the ship up in pieces. And a lot of the stuff that was on that ship was auctioned off. Like the grand staircase that was identical to the Titanic's. I think the statue that was at the bottom of that grand staircase, I think that was auctioned off. A lot of the shit was auctioned off inside the Olympic, which was actually the Titanic. So that's really fucked up, because I watched a movie called Ghost of the Abyss, and I guess like James Cameron and the guy that played I forgot his goddamn name in the Titanic movie, the guy that was heading the expedition down to the Titanic. They went on an actual expedition down to the Titanic, and in these submersibles, and these submersibles had robot subs that were tethered, basically by a fiber optic cable. They were tethered to the submersibles, and they went inside the ship to give you all this detailed footage, of like even the captain's bathtub, where the grand staircase was, all that shit collapsed, all that stuff. And so to see all that footage, and then to finally find out that all that footage that we seeing is not actually the Titanic, it's another ship, and the shit was sunk deliberately. It's just absolutely just crazy. But it doesn't surprise me, because like I said before, I think when it comes to corruption, I think American corporations are the most corrupt. I think there's no line they won't cross to protect their money. I think if somebody threatened to expose us some wicked shit that they doing, then I think that corporation will have them murdered and make it look like an accident. It's a fucked up thing to say, but I wonder if Microsoft had anybody murdered. Because with the kind of money that Microsoft pulls in, if somebody threatens to expose some shady shit that's going on within that company, I really believe Microsoft would find a way to make that person disappear. So I've seen other documentaries, Entertainment Wizard, where they try to prove that yes, this is the Titanic, and I think I heard about that, Razi, about them making some investments in Africa. I don't really know the details of it, but if Microsoft functions the way they do as far as gaming goes, they're not going to make an investment unless they know they're going to make a ton of money back on it. They're not going to take chances. At least that's the way they are as far as gaming goes. And if that is indicative of the company itself, then they wouldn't have made any kind of investments in Africa unless they know they could have made a bunch of money off of it. Said Bill Gates has said he's given African vaccinations to help with their population problem. Him and Ted Turner both said the world has too many people in it. Wow. Vaccinations or a permanent sedative? That's the question. And if you decide that the world has too many people in it, Why are you choosing Africa as the place to go rectify this problem? Bill Gates might not be alive by 2035. So, I mean, I mean, on the depopulation agenda, Alex Jones likes to talk about it, but never he heard he's saying about this. Uh, not did I follow his talk show. I don't even know who that is. I mean, one thing on TV, they are not going to let talk shows uh, talk about conspiracy theories or go out of their way to expose corruption within the American government, within the American justice system, within American corporations. So whenever so if I turn on the TV and some kind of analyst show, some kind of financial analyst show starts talking about Comcast or something like that, I'm going to turn the channel. It says the rich will kill their own families. So it's no surprise they will kill innocent people for profit. Exactly, sure. The recently banned lunatic claiming school shooting is fake. Okay. But the only thing I can say is that that's one of the things about me. I'm glad that I'm the little man, that I don't have to, the only thing I have to worry about is a corrupt cop shooting me. That's really the only thing in America that I have to worry about. Other than that, I don't make any money that somebody's going to put a bullseye on my back to have me knocked off because I might expose somebody else's dirty dealings. Is that some shit like that? Alex Jones does have the facts, but he's an agent for the government. All them people who buy his sponsors most likely are red flagged by the government. Notice you see InfoWars stickers. Oh, I said a lot of that shit I don't watch. You mean like um check William Murdoch mystery. The site has a major piece on the switch theory. I mean, does this William Murdoch mystery? So based on this documentary that I've linked in the description, Murdoch was in on the deliberate sinking as well. But basically, it wasn't his choice. He was, I think he was promoted to chief officer on the Olympic, and E.J. Smith, the captain, pulled a string to have him brought onto the Titanic. Which I think that was already fuck up. I thought that was already, fuck move number one. Have pulling the string to have him brought onto the Titanic. Number two, that if you're going to bring him onto the Titanic, you pull that string to lift him out of his chief officer position on the Olympic. You should have made him chief officer on the Titanic as well. The site has a lot of info and discusses how it probably didn't happen. They have a lot of evidence. I don't dispute that, Entertainment Wizard, because I've seen some shit where I'm like, okay, maybe that really is the Titanic, down there. I've seen a lot of shit that, that may support the belief that it really is the Titanic down there. But The biggest reason it makes me believe that that's the Olympic down there is the motive as to why the ship was deliberately sunk, that it was deliberately sunk to collect insurance. What this documentary is telling you is that after the ship had its keel bent from that collision with the battleship, the documentary was saying that, first of all, the insurance wouldn't pay for the damages. So they was already fucked right there. And then because the ship would never pass another border trade inspection, the ship would have been put out of service and they would have been ordered to fix the ship before they could put it back in service. So for what it would have cost to repair the ship, it would have been worth it. But if they don't get that ship back in the water because the Titanic wasn't ready yet, the Titanic was, they were still finishing up the Titanic. And I think they had just started construction of the Britannic. So out of those three ships, the Olympic was the only one that was in service. So if it would have had to been taken out of service because of the damage to the Olympic, if it would have been taken out of service, it would have crippled them, and it maybe even caused them to go bankrupt. Now, so what they're saying is that if White Star would have went bankrupt because they weren't turning a profit because the ship wasn't in service, if they would have went bankrupt, it would have caused Harlan and Wolff, which built the ships, it would have caused them to go bankrupt, and it would have caused the dependent, industries, the dependent companies, the subsidiary companies to go under as well. And that would have meant that 20,000, that was the word that they used in the documentary, that 20,000 Irishmen would have been out of a job. And that was the government's motive for helping with the cover up, because if White Star, Holland and Wolff, and all the subsidiary independent companies would have went under, and 20,000 people would have been out of work, it would have caused them to lose the next election. So the British Prime Minister, he didn't want to do it at first, but he had a vested interest in covering up the sinking as well. Entertainment Wizard, I agree there is evidence to support there could be a switch, but there's too much to support it, that it is Titanic. But I agree, it's a solid debate. Sure, you said the USA learned propaganda from Germany, which is why you can't believe what mainstream media is saying. If there's always a boogeyman, they will, then there will always be war. Sure, Abdil, I think no media spreads propaganda more than the American media. I don't think any media lies more than the American media. And I think the American media will lie for a major corporation quicker than anyone. Ahmad Razi, one thing about these shootings that really gets on my nerves is that every time there's a shooting and there's talks about banning guns, how these people that support the NRA start crying that their guns going to get taken away and all this kind of stuff. That's whatever. But one of the dumbest things that I ever saw was on Facebook, where somebody tried to post a stat that says more people are killed from drunk driving than they are from school shootings. And I said, that is the most idiotic comparison I have ever seen in my life. Because first of all, somebody who picks up a gun and walks into a school has the intentions of murdering a bunch of people. People who get behind the wheel of a car drunk, they more than likely, they don't have any intentions of killing anyone. And not only that, a car is not designed to kill people, whereas a gun is. So I told this guy, trying to compare drunk driving accidents to mass murder will never fly with me. It's the most ridiculous comparison a person can make. I mean, anybody who makes that comparison is, to use the words of OBJ, is one dumb motherfucker. uh, Elencha speaks. So if you buy an Xbox, you support genocide? I don't know. I guess if you want to make a joke about it, yes. I guess if you want to be super serious about it, wondering that wondering if Microsoft has probably has made some people disappear. Yeah. Yeah, Entertainment Wizard, that was the dumbest comparison I ever heard. Andrew Wilkins, the government created Lyme disease using German scientists who in the past infected wood ticks in Germany. They created these diseases at Plum Island off the coast of New York City, mentioned on The Silence of the Lambs. I wouldn't doubt that one minute. You know, there are civil rights leaders who believe that AIDS was created in a laboratory for the purpose of reducing the population of minorities, blacks in particular. Uh, I don't know that I really don't know about. You know, supposedly there's no cure to AIDS, but you know, Magic Johnson's looking pretty good for somebody who's HIV positive. You know, the dude still looks strong as a bull, even though he's 50 something years old. That makes me think about that Dave Chappelle episode where he was the black president talking about if I told you some of the things that I was sworn to secrecy about, you would buckle under the goddamn pressure. For example, I have here the cure of AIDS. We've had this in our laboratory for some 15 years. Damn, it's already after 11 o'clock. I was supposed to shut this shit down about 20 minutes ago. Hey, but that's the cool part about talking to all of you, having conversations with all of you. That's what makes this great. I mean, I said I was only going to be on 45 minutes, hour. Here it is, 2 hours later. Do the same for the movie I recommend you, Inside Job. It is based on real, indisputable facts. No conspiracy. It really exposes the criminal, but the law available cannot execute them. Rozzy, that don't surprise me one single bit. Uh, one of my friends that I grew up with, I lived with him and his father for a few years, and his father read a lot of Time Life magazines. He did a lot of reading, watched a lot of news reports. And so when that Enron shit happened, where whoever it was stole all that fucking money and all he got was probation and like a $10 million fine when he stole like hundreds of millions of dollars. My friend's father told me he knew that was going to happen because he was basically saying that, you know, a lot of corporations basically paid off the government to put laws in place to only give these corporate heads a slap on the wrist for stealing money. You know, these guys steals hundreds of millions of dollars and only get probation and a fine that's only pennies on the dollar. But yet I can walk into a fucking store and try to steal a pair of Jordans and get locked up for 5 years. Imagine if these masses found out the government had the cure to cancer and withheld it, there would be an insane uprising. But the question, you know, the one thing I always wonder, that Entertainment Wizard, I mean, if there really was a cure for cancer, it makes me wonder how long could we live as human beings? Andrew Wilkins, yes, AIDS was created in Europe. In the 70s and 80s, doctors injected many gays in LA and New York City with hepatitis shots laced with HIV. That's how AIDS skipped the majority of people who are straight at first. I don't dispute that one bit, Andrew Wilkins, because when the AIDS scare first came on the scene, the media was reporting it as was starting with gays and them having unprotected sex and that kind of shit. So a lot of these conspiracy theories that you guys are talking about, some of them I heard about, some of them I hadn't, some of them I have not. So a lot of interesting stuff here. When it comes to conspiracy theories, I'm all ears. I'm willing to listen to anything because, like I said, I know there's a lot of shit that I don't know about. I know there's a lot of shit that I probably seen on the news that there was probably some undercover shit going on, but never bothered to look into it because, like I said, when it comes to American corporations, American governments, American justice systems, and shit like that, whenever the media says something, a lot of times I just turn the channel because a lot of times they're just gonna lie. So, but seriously, let me go ahead and shut this shit down. I've been streaming for 2 hours now. Um, it was definitely a joy to talk to everybody about these conspiracy theories, and I'm really glad that all of you really chimed in on this. It was like nobody got upset. It was like, hey, this is supposed to be a gaming channel. Why are we talking about conspiracies? To me, these go hand in hand now that Titanic experience is coming to PlayStation VR, and I absolutely can't wait to try it. And it gave me an opportunity to share my beliefs about the Titanic theories about the ships being switched. So I really want to thank everybody for listening to it. I mean, 11 of you still here now, and I've been talking about this shit for almost 2 hours. So I'm really thankful for that. I really appreciate it. So with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and shut this stream down. I'll be back on in about 15 minutes. I'll stream something here in about 15 minutes. I'm just trying to decide what I'm going to stream. So with that being said, thanks everybody for checking it out. I really appreciate it. For those of you who happen to catch this on the replay, give it a like you're doing on your way out. And we will see you guys in a few minutes on the PlayStation once I figure out what I'm going to stream. Thanks everybody for watching. We will see y'all shortly. This is your boy Lincoln Clay, and I am out.